doctors able to bring a fresh ray of hope to threatened lives. For one young man, the brain is a prison, racked with violent electrical storms. For this woman, an uncontrollable tremor shackles an arm and saddens her life.
The operation involves an operation on your brain. You have to be wide awake so that we can make sure the operation isn't harming your ability to move or to think.
And a little girl who has stopped growing and is losing her sight is badly in need of a medical miracle. Supporting the quest to know the brain better is an arsenal of innovative technology. Breakthroughs that move into and beyond the frontier of the body's last forbidden zone. Within the vital connection is a renewed look at ourselves.
The big shadow was on a big tree.
A vision that changes the way we see life and the way we perceive the marvels of the body human. Human brain is giving a command performance. But what appears to be a composer conducting a rehearsal is actually a brain in action.
Left flute.
Every human brain is divided into right and left halves.
I want to hear the melody, Mike.
And though interconnected, the right brain and the left brain have distinct and different features. The music begins in a maze of circuitry housed mainly in the composer's right brain.
Bar 13 through bar 22.
Because only the left brain can speak, musical notes are telegraphed from right brain to left brain.
We have a dotted quarter and an eighth tied to another quarter note and so forth. So it's 2 bars with a pickup.
And the maestro speaks. A language of music. Music falls short of his expectations.
It's all wrong, that's why. I was wondering why the heck that thing wasn't working. Okay, let me just try that bar again. Bar 17.
The musicians adjust by delicately moving fingers and interpreting the new melody.
We've got it. I think we've got it now. That's just the way to do it. Here we go, from the top.
And now, through the workings of a composer's brain, the ideas and sounds are finally made music. Weighing 3.5 pounds, the grayish, wrinkled brain is dominated by huge right and left thinking caps perched on a long, slender brain stem. The brain stem connects with the spinal cord, and the cord is actually an electric cable transmitting nerve signals between brain and body at 250 miles per hour. In the course of a normal day, the brain manages countless routine events with remarkable nonchalance. During sleep, centers in the brain's stem pace the heartbeat, remind 90 chest muscles to keep breathing, and even use miniature thermostats to audit constantly the body's temperature. If it's too cool, you'll automatically pull up the covers, and if it gets too warm, perspiration provides central air conditioning. Moving at a foot per second, a man's razor clips off 15,000 whiskers skin close, even while his mind is preoccupied with planning the day's events. Finger control is so important that on both human thinking caps, it receives more attention than any other group of body muscles. But making muscles do delicate work would be impossible without the cerebellum, the brain's muscle-integrating control box. That first morning coffee floods the brain with information. In a split instant, aroma, taste, and temperature are logged in the thinking caps. And when everything registers properly, there is a single conscious decision to swallow. Automatically, clusters of vital connections in the brainstem elevate the tongue, close the voice box, and program throat muscles to squirt the coffee directly into the swallowing tube. A vigorous game of squash needs the brainstem to adjust breathing and heart rate to exertion, and the cerebellum to make racket and ball come into perfect contact, and the thinking caps to churn legs, wave arms, plan strategy, enjoy victory, and feel desolate in defeat. And finally, the brain's internal clock gently reminds that it's time to call it quits, to slumber. And the brain mysteriously begins a mystical journey into sleep. The brain has all the power to make daily living carefree, but the smallest misfire can bring tragic consequences. And for a 25-year-old former student, Carol Culver of Gadsden, Alabama, a short circuit in brain wiring has torn the joy out of a young life.
The first time I did go to a formal, well, not necessarily a formal dance, but a slow dance with a boy, yeah, I was very, very self-conscious in my hands. And then as the time has increased, or as time has passed since the accident, that self-consciousness has disappeared because I realized that if people don't like it, well, I mean, I can't do anything about it, and they just don't have to look at it.
Carol remembers it only as a nightmare. Screeching brakes, the smell of burning rubber, and a car collapsing around her. Then, nothing. For 8 weeks, deep coma, on the threshold of death, until by some miracle, her brain slowly awoke. But Carol Culver was never to be the same again.
It's a very common type of tremor in young people who have had a head injury and been unconscious for a long time. You don't see it much in older people who have that severe an injury because they don't survive the accident. I want you to just relax so I can see what your problem really is. We don't want to cover the problem, I want to see it.
Irving Cooper, neurosurgeon-in-chief at New York's Westchester County Medical Center, agrees to try a complex brain freezing operation in hopes of helping Carol Culver.
Okay. Do it with your right hand. The operation involves an operation on your brain. Everybody's brain is a little bit different, and everybody's injury is a little bit different. And so you have to be wide awake, and you have to be able to talk to me so that we can make sure that in your particular case, the operation isn't harming your speech or harming your ability to move or to think. All operations have a risk. The risk, statistically, of this type of operation here is a little under 1%. So statistically, it's very small, but it's important because within that 1%, that means you could die from the operation.
In less than 12 hours, Carol Culver, wide awake, will direct an operation on her own brain. 4 stainless steel pins tightly clamp Carol's head because she must not move even a fraction of an inch during surgery. Dr. Cooper has performed more of these delicate operations than any other neurosurgeon alive.
Okay, I'll put it to your mouth as if you were drinking from it.
By the strange ground rules of brain freezing surgery, an icy probe replaces a surgeon's knife. And Dr. Cooper will never see the inner brain on which he operates.
I find it very tough, actually. The courage of these people go through this wide awake. I don't know, I just kind of feel like at times like I'm the patient. I find it tough.
The Culver case is particularly challenging. As a result of Carol's injury, a misfiring relay switch located deep in the brain substance is permitting uncoordinated impulses to reach movement centers controlling her left arm.
That looks like it might be 18.
Dr. Cooper's challenge is to locate the invisible pea-sized relay and then to deactivate it without harming nearby vital brain centers. Brain tissue itself has no sense of pain when cut. And so it is theoretically possible to guide a slender hollow probe gradually through the brain and directly into the faulty relay switch while Carol remains completely awake. If all goes well, the spot can be instantaneously frozen by a drop of liquid nitrogen, destroying malfunctioning brain cells while leaving the surroundings undamaged. The operation begins.
We're okay.
The advancing probe must pass dangerously close to nerve cables controlling muscles on the left side of Carol's body.
Now, raise your left arm, Carol. Raise it.
By raising her arm, Carol tells Dr. Cooper he is on the right track.
Measure this now.
The surgery is partly science, but also partly hunch.
Hold your arm where it begins.
An art learned by over 15,000 previous trips to the innards of a human brain.
All right, X-rays, please. No.
Using X-ray landmarks in the same way ancient mariners used stars for celestial navigation, Dr. Cooper must position the probe tip within an uncharted brain.
Pick your arm up here, please. Your left
The
arm.
probe is in position, and Dr. Cooper makes the decision to freeze tissue.
Now, here, you have to help me now. Squeeze my fingers, please. Minus 50, please.
To be sure the freezing is not destroying vital centers, he constantly checks Carol's grip and sensations.
Not in your thumb. Or this one.
There, in my middle finger.
Yeah. I think her tremor is all gone as far as we can tell. She's got a little ataxia. Touch your nose again for me. Oh, no, that's a little tremor.
The first freezing is not completely successful. Dr. Cooper faces a crucial decision.
Now, the question that we have to decide is whether this is enough, whether getting rid of her postural tremor and lifting her finger without weight bearing, relieving that tremor is enough, or must we take an added risk and put in a second lesion.
Plans one last attempt. Because it would be dangerous to continue freezing exactly the same spot, he must meticulously reposition the probe.
Ish?
Yes,
What's the tip to target measurement?
about 4.5 centimeters.
Moving the instrument increases the risk of causing brain hemorrhage.
All right, let's check that, please.
During the next hour, the perilous journey of the ice probe is X-ray checked 6 separate times. Finally, it is precisely in the spot that Dr. Cooper suspects is still causing trouble.
We haven't had a single problem. Everything is perfect. And we may be finished quite shortly, but I need your help.
And now for Carol Culver, a last attempt to stop the tremor.
Okay.
1 minute minus 50.
70. Squeeze hard. Oh, that's great. Touch your nose with this finger. Dear? Well, do it then.
1 minute minus 70.
90. Let me have that white cup. Take that, hold it right there. Okay. That's what we wanted. We now seem to have it.
It looks like you did.
It looks like we did it. Okay, sweetheart.
Thank you.
My God, I think we knocked out your southern accent.
For Carol Culver, a vital connection restored. These remarkable views of a 40-day-old living human embryo are photographed through a slender optical telescope peering inside the womb. They are the earliest motion pictures ever to document the developing brain and spinal cord. The brain is growing astronomically, wiring new cells at an astonishing 50,000 a minute. The circuitry already totally controls the thumbnail-sized body and fires nerve signals through a spinal cord barely thick as a thread. By the 7th or 8th week of human life, eye photosensors connect to the brain's visual cables. The growing brain is pushing the skull outward, shaping a human head from within. And for the first time, nerves and muscles work together. Now the brain signals legs to move, fingers to curl, and by 10 weeks, the fetal brainstem begins to practice swallowing and breathing. Because the brain has working touch circuits, the fetus feels its own face, and soon prodigious human thinking caps crown the brainstem. Then, during the first year of life, brain size doubles or even triples, and the stage is set for the miracle of speech. No function of the human brain is more mysterious, none so unimaginably complex.
Let me break this part.
The left half of the screen approximates the way in which growth and interconnection of brain cell wiring make speech progress during a 60-day period in this child.
It goes into spider up the water clouds. How can you sun and dry up our suns?
Garbled noises turn to simple single words.
How can you sun and dry up our rain? So, when you spider up the water clouds. Yay! Then we get new.
Words are linked together.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. No, I don't.
The brain automatically adds the finesse of grammar and sentence construction.
But I don't now. I don't now. Because I live in other.
More and more of the brain cells
I
interconnect.
live in Nemo's house. I don't live in this house anymore. This is my big crib. When I get big, I'm going to get a big bed. But it's all gone now. But it's gone now.
Speech explodes.
It goes in a garbage and it broke. Can't get my bunk.
And the human being receives the incredible gift of communication.
Because I wanted a bunk bed. Because I like the bunk bed.
A working brain needs huge amounts of oxygen-rich blood. And these radioactive motion pictures show a brain intricately regulating its blood supply, moment to moment. Compare a normal brain on the left with one stricken with irreversible coma. The pictures show that the comatose brain uses very little oxygen, the classic picture of a dead brain within a living body. A most revolutionary study technique is computer-assisted X-rays called CAT scans. These spinal column scans show how the computer magically rotates the image and even conducts a three-dimensional journey downward through the inner spinal canal. Here, the X-ray scans move through a brain layer by layer. Each layer can be examined from every conceivable angle. And in this case, the moving crosshairs zero in on a growth that would be invisible on conventional X-rays. The new knowledge and technologies are the hard-won payoffs of over 100 years of research. Breakthroughs bringing never-before-possible skills to doctors of the vital connection. And for one of them, neurosurgeon Russell Patterson of the New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center, the next 24 hours will put each of these skills to a grueling test.
Well, how have you been, Barbara Lynn?
Fine. What time am I going to call up?
Well, I would guess it'd probably be around 7:15, something like that. And then they'll put you in a little room on the stretcher. As I mentioned, it'll take off a little bit of your hair, but not very much. You won't look like Kojak or anything like that. You'll have bangs.
Under my bangs?
Yeah, under your bangs, you'll lose a little hair.
That's not too bad.
And you'll have a big bandage on your head, and maybe you'll have some headache, and maybe you won't have some headache. And...
Stop that. Come on.
Oh.
That's silly. Come on.
There are no heroes in the world. I think everybody's frightened, all patients. And there are just two kinds, those who say they are and those who won't admit it.
At 10 years of age, fifth grader Barbara Lynn Roth of Kings Park, New York, is no taller than the average 7-year-old. The medical mystery began 3 years ago when Barbara Lynn slowly stopped growing and was continually thirsty. Tests failed to explain why her seemingly normal brain was unable to regulate the hormones that govern growth and thirst.
What's the matter?
And then, just 6 months ago, the most frightening symptom.
Well, her right side has been affected tremendously in the past 6 months.
But one day she came home and she said she fell asleep during a movie, which for Barbara Lynn was very...
I
almost fell asleep.
Almost.
Right.
There is only one spot where the control centers of thirst, growth, and vision lie side by side. And a CAT scan, looking deep into Barbara Lynn's skull, confirms that a small mass of abnormal tissue, called a nodule, is putting pressure on the base of the brain.
Dear Barbara Lynn, I believe...
The medical odds overwhelmingly favor the nodules being tiny and fluid-filled.
I'd like you to know what I think friendship means. Friendship...
But there is a remote chance that it is a tumor called a germinoma, and only surgical sampling can establish a certain diagnosis.
Best friend.
Our luck's been good with it, but you can't help but be a little nervous about this kind of operation in such a small child.
The surgery is tricky, but very much a part of the new technology. Working through a small incision on the scalp, Dr. Patterson will gently lift the brain's thinking cap, locate the mass of tissue, and remove it. The operation leaves no scars and will last about 4 hours.
There's the other optic nerve.
The trouble spot comes into view, and the mass is larger than expected. Dr. Patterson takes a specimen of tissue.
Here comes some specimen.
The tissue is sent for microscopic examination.
We'll wait and see what people tell us back there in the lab. Sitting and waiting.
And the tension-filled moments of awaiting the report fill the operating room with anticipation. Germinoma.
There's no way you could get it all out, so we're sort of stuck, I think, with just taking pieces.
Dr. Patterson, hoping against hope, will personally check the tissue specimen.
It's as sure as we can be on a frozen section. The pattern is right, the two-cell population is right, the location is right, the age is right.
And now, the consummate test of skill and compassion.
It's sort of a, I don't know exactly what to say. It wasn't a craniopharyngioma. It was the other thing we talked about, a germinoma or
What does that mean?
a cochlear pineal. Well, it's a tumor that you can't take out entirely on account of, don't get too bad about it, because it's not separate and distinct from the optic nerves and the hypothalamus and the pituitary, but the pituitary and optic nerves all run through it, so you can't take out the tumor without taking out the nerves, for example. But this one is one that is very sensitive to radiation, and we have some very long-term survivors, patients going back 30 years or more who are still all right. Well,
Like through me.
as I say, we have young people now going, since the late 40s who have had no recurrence of the tumor, and they're still going along. Now, maybe if it hasn't come back in 30 years, maybe it won't come back in 30 more.
Let me just understand you. There's still something left that has to be destroyed by radiation. Is that?
That's right.
Do I understand you?
That's right. It's not good, you don't want it, but it's possible for her to live a normal life, go to school, go to college, get a job, get married, and be a very first-rate person. I have a little girl, not too much bigger than Barbara Lynn, so I know how it affects you. But with just a little luck, she ought to do very well.
All right, we'll hope for a little luck.
Yeah, that's right. She's due a little luck.
Barbara Lynn Roth is scheduled for chemotherapy and radiation in hope of destroying the germinoma. Connection will continue. Several weeks pass. And then the odds change dramatically. The germinoma is of a type that is extraordinarily sensitive to the treatment program. Within a month, it completely disappears. And a CAT scan is perfectly normal.
Yeah, really.
Luck has held out. And by every standard of measurement known to science, Barbara Lynn Roth is cured. Just a normal little girl again. The human brain is evolution's ultimate act of magic. And these striking time-lapse motion pictures taken sequentially from above bring us inside the billion-year-old architecture. A brain is completely wired to do all the countless things needed for survival, but it can also acquire new skills through the programming of trillions of nerve circuits. The ability to rehearse and program brain circuits with dexterity and split-second timing is a magician's real magic. Practice makes perfect is brain training, hand movements made totally automatic. And once the magician squeezes his brain trigger, everything happens with a precise, phenomenal quickness. Slow motion photography gives away the brain's secret and shows how the magician's brain deceives yours. The brain's thinking caps are its crowning achievement, possessing the gifts of intellect, reason, memory, and personality. But the left cap specializes in analytical thought, speech, and arithmetic, while the right is more intuitive, creative, artistic, and musical. The thinking caps do all our high-level thought, and below them, in the brain stem, reside the more instinctive emotions of rage, fear, and self-preservation. The brain stem is also the seat of sexual desire and the time clock of fertility cycles. The ageless brain that guarantees preservation of the species. Close by are the sleep regulator centers. Motion picture studies show that each night these centers guide the brain through 5 or 6 sleep cycles. In this time-lapse photography, a 90-minute sleep cycle is compressed into a single minute. During the first 5 minutes of dozing, it's common to get the feeling of floating, and sometimes you'll even awake for a moment with a sudden jerk. Then, in the next half hour, sleep deepens. And even though the sleeper automatically tosses and turns, he is now practically unrousable. Then, as sleep gradually gets lighter, a tiny cluster of brain stem cells begins firing messages throughout the brain, and suddenly the sleeper starts dreaming. Snoring stops, breathing gets a bit irregular, and beneath closed eyelids, eyeballs dart back and forth as the dreamer watches a private movie in vivid color. Chase dreams are among the most common. Excitement builds, and the heart speeds up. But the brain protects the dreamer from harm by automatically paralyzing arms and legs for almost the entire dream sequence. In 10 or 15 minutes, the dream is over, and the sleeper once again plunges toward deep sleep and starts the 90-minute cycle all over again.
Okay, ready, shoot.
As far as 24-year-old Patrick Riggs of Carterville, Illinois is concerned, the magic and wonderment of the human brain is for other people.
How you feeling?
And this trip to the University of Minnesota hospitals is the end of the road.
Ready to go away now, Pat? That heat?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you feel? And I want to look at the films we just took.
We're not have to shoot them over.
I don't want to shoot them over.
Oh.
I sure don't.
His dream of becoming a professional golfer is long shattered. Made impossible 6 years ago by the scars of a brain infection. Scars that now rack his body with violent convulsions as often as 5 or 6 times a day. The seizures are a form of epilepsy. And though epilepsy can be controlled usually by drugs, the Riggs case is the exception.
Okay, we got one more to go, and then we'll be through.
Yeah, I said there's
This is a piece of cake. Okay, Brian.
That's
a piece of cake.
Yeah, sure it
And
is.
now, with all the facts laid before him, Pat alone can decide whether to risk brain surgery in hopes of making a recovery.
Bring your whole hand out of the board. Good. Now we're going to get set to take some films.
Right straight on here. Just look right straight up.
Okay.
Chin up, just like we did before.
For a strong young man who cannot drive and cannot work and cannot play golf, the decision is surprisingly easy.
The way I look at it, I'm not really taking all that much of a risk.
The Riggs case is a medical detective story. Somewhere among the billions of brain cells, old scars create short circuits that trigger electrical storms to race through Pat's brain and convulse his body. There are 2 challenges. First, the short circuits must be located with absolute precision, and then, if possible, the scarred brain tissue must be removed. Mapping a brain for hidden electrical storms is a tedious, painstaking skill, and in the Riggs case, requires round-the-clock eavesdropping on every brain impulse. Electrical mapping of Pat's brain reveals a nest of short circuits located on the front part of the right thinking cap. These are the storm centers causing seizures.
There's nothing in the way of a unitary motor component to this at all. It's all very organized behavior, it seems to me. And that, do you notice that he puts his right hand, actually, he tried to put his right hand always on his tail, you know. In the past of the years, he has kept having seizures.
There are 3 key strategists in the Riggs case. Dr. Robert Gumnett, neurologist. Dr. Shelley Shue, neurosurgeon. Dr. Fernando Torres, brainwave expert.
Now, when he was up around...
This is a spring.
Read this.
The light yellow straw hat looks good on her.
What did I just show you?
A spring.
Because the Riggs surgery will be on the right thinking cap, Dr. Gumnett must confirm that Pat's speech control is in the left brain.
Read this for me.
Wasn't the cardboard box opened by the truck driver?
That's good.
To get an answer, he uses a short-acting sleeping drug to split Pat's brain temporarily into separate halves. The right brain controls the body's left side. And as the left arm falls, it signals that the right brain is asleep.
Okay, keep your arm up, Pat. Can you keep it up?
All groggy.
You're all groggy, huh? What is this called?
Knife.
Good. Can you read this for me, Pat?
It was the airplane that made the loud noise.
A good sign. Pat is able to speak using his left brain alone, the sign of a left-sided brain speech center.
Pencil. Knife.
But to be extra cautious, the drug is injected into the left brain artery, and now the left brain sleeps. The right brain struggles to read, but misinterprets the words as numbers.
What is that word, Pat? Can you read that word? Okay. What's this, Pat?
Well,
what is this?
the leather.
It vaguely recognizes a shoe without being able to name it.
3-card
The brain splitting confirms that a right-sided operation will not interfere with Pat's speech. Testing is completed. And one of the most unusual operations in all of neurosurgery is about to begin. The scene is a modern war room. The mission, search and destroy. Dr. Shu exposes Pat's brain and explores the surface with 16 tiny electrical sensors.
3, 4, 4, 15.
Dr. Torres mans a central control room, mapping the telltale spikes that signal a hidden electrical storm center.
This is probably enough. That's 15.
You see anything?
Would you check 15 then?
A suspicious area.
Now the temporal is fairly quiet. Spikes, that's 2, and you're there.
Storm centers are located under sensors number 4, 11, and 15.
We have recorded 2 seizures.
2 seizures?
Yeah, one that started at 4. It was mainly spikes, and then the second one started at 15.
Yes.
And that has the slow waves just like we were seeing
on the EEG.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is now the most active one is 15.
I think we still can take a chunk of cortex out like that without too much problem on the right side. Left side would be getting into trouble.
The first storm center is removed.
Any change, Fernando? 15 is quiet.
And the brainwave blip disappears. An hour later, a deeper second storm center is finally ready for removal.
No problem.
A broader incision.
It's right in this spot.
And again, success.
Which is the worst, Fernando?
4.
On the gyrus in front of the motor strip.
The frontal lobe, not the temporal. Especially
the third storm is checked and rechecked.
On in number 2.
It is located only a hair's breadth from brain centers controlling movements on the left side of Patrick Riggs' body.
That's the triangle of brain tissue removal.
The team must decide whether to risk the surgical removal.
That's bad news. Well, the physical activity is frontal again.
Dr. Shu decides the risk of paralysis or memory loss is too high, and that with 2 of the storm centers removed, the third may be controllable with drugs alone. After 6 hours, surgery ends. Now, only watching and waiting can tell if the mission is successfully accomplished. The human brain has given another command performance. Patrick Riggs is dramatically improved. His memory, dexterity, and speech perfectly intact. And finally, Pat has every hope of one day becoming seizure-free.
Good material to operate on. You know that, Lindsay?
His banner over me.
And Carol Culver is starting her life all over again.
Your emotions in the first verse says, I once was bound, but now I'm free.
Restored. Each a symbol of the vitality of the vital connection.
vital connection was sponsored by the American Bankers Association and the full-service bank in your town, meeting the financial needs of people and your community. That's a full-service bank.